This whole time, my mic my mic was muted this entire time. Thank you, Brendan. All right, so now I have to say that whole entire thing all over again. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Jerry, Joshua, Peter. I need to pay attention to the chat. All right. I gotta say this whole entire thing over again for you, Peter. TLDR, fantastic, fantastic team so far. You have a lot of young assets, a lot of producing assets. With the 1.07, you're probably looking at somebody like Jonathan Brooks or Brian Thomas Jr. Love that pick. 109 is probably like McConkey or Coleman or somebody like that. I would like to see if you could trade away the 111 or the 112 because for like a future first, because then there's like a decent like 90 to 95% probability that you're going to get a better first round pick numerically next year. Maybe not like player wise, like talent wise, it may not be a better prospect, but numerically you might get a higher first round pick next year in 2025. There's decent odds of that with the 111, 112 if you can send that over for a future first round pick. Uh, um, and but yeah, but I would basically I would like to see if you could try to. You're gonna have a lot of depth. I mean, you have obviously, especially at the wide receiver position, you have 4 great guys. You're probably gonna add in another 2 or 3 with these first round picks. I would be trying to see how you can convert that depth into higher, more elite caliber starting wide receivers. Like try to go up and get CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, Puka, anybody like that. Trade ETN or trade Nico and Pittman for Amon-Ra. Trade Pittman and one of those firsts for Garrett Wilson or Puka or somebody. Like try to see if you can move up in value at the wide receiver position to transfer some of that depth and just continue the cycle of championships coming over for you. You're whispering sweet nothings in my ear, Addison. Dude, this audio interface has a very touchy mute button. I must have bumped it at some point. But anyway, but yeah, so Peter, that was the rundown of that one for the second time. So I appreciate it. You guys sticking around while my audio was muted. All right, Brendan, 12-team Superflex, full PPR start 11, Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, no running backs, Puka JSN, Addison Downs, Wilson, Kittle, whole bunch of firsts again. Debating if I should try rebuilding one more year or try to draft or trade for running backs and compete. You do have an inbox offer of give the 101, receive 510 and 2.04. Very interesting. Okay, so personally, I would not do that 101 deal. I just want Caleb Williams. I would just take Caleb. Then you have Anthony Richardson and Caleb. And then just kind of go from there. Draft best player available. And they happen to be running backs, and they happen to be running backs. 1.09, I would be looking at Brian Thomas Jr. 112 would be ideally Jonathan Brooks. That could be Bo Nix as well. It could be another wide receiver. 211, 212, 301. You're in perfect like Corum, Lloyd, Jalen Wright range, Ray Davis range with those picks. So maybe those running backs can kind of help you to gain a little bit of depth, and then maybe some of them actually end up doing something. Maybe not this year, but basically all of this to say that I wouldn't push yourself towards competing this year. But if it ends up working out that way because Richardson goes off, Caleb Williams has a really good year, you're making good start set decisions with all your wide receivers, a couple running backs, kind of come out, or maybe you trade one of those 25 seconds for like Aaron Jones or Joe Mixon or somebody. I wouldn't do that now, but if you find yourself by the end of September, as we get into October, that you're 500, or maybe you're 3-1, 3-2, 4-3, 4-2, you kind of want to go for it. Then that would be a move that I would be looking to do, is trying to trade for cheaper running back production to fill that gap on your team, and not really try to make some massive move, like trade 2 of those first round picks for, ETN or something like that. I probably wouldn't go for that, but micro moves would be better for you. If you find yourself competing in 2024, you might not even be competing in 2024. Your team just might not be ready yet because of all the young players, and maybe it takes Caleb a little bit to get going, and all that kind of stuff. So I would I would basically act like 2024 is another rebuild year and go into 2025, give everybody another year to kind of develop and produce. But if you end up being in a compete window, or being more of a contender than you thought, then you can make smaller moves to try to push for that without impacting the overall value or age of your roster. Genji managed to get a BTJ share, got an Xavier Worthy one too. Same league. Love it. Love it. I'm all aboard the Brian Thomas Jr. train for sure. Of your 2 rookie drafts, you've now gotten 2 for 2 Caleb Neighbors Burton. Love getting Caleb, love getting Neighbors. Burton is a fantastic later round pick as well too. Javante Spears or ETN in a 1 quarterback league. I'm taking ETN here pretty easily. I love Javante. I think Spears is going to be fine. I don't necessarily view him as the lead back in Tennessee. He might be on the 40 end of a 60-40 split. I love ETN. I think he's a workhorse running back who has full 2-down workhorse ability, plus then the 3rd down option as a receiving pass catching back too. Another year in the offense, another year removed from injury. I think that this Jaguars offense is going to be pretty solid this year, and I think ETN is going to be a big part of that. So I will take ETN here. I usually don't like trading up at the running back position, but I think this is a good deal that makes a lot of sense just to go get ETN. 12-team Superflex PPR 1.5 tight end premium start 10. I have Herbert, Tua, Carr, Minshew. Not going to read the whole entire roster, but it looks like a very solid young roster. Any ideas on how to upgrade my wide receiver or running back? You also have 3 2025 firsts. Very good question. So you have really good wide receivers, especially in a start 10. It's nice to have that option of being able to start London, Neighbors, Odunze, and Pittman. Might not all work together, in 2024, but for the future, that looks really good. So those are 4 starters right there. You got Cook as another starter. Obviously, you're starting 2 quarterbacks, another tight end, and probably Hawk or Schultz. So you just need to find one more spot, which is probably your RB2. Do you have any other 2025 picks? If you have seconds, then I would be trying to give you the same exact advice that I was giving Brendan, where basically, like, if you have a couple spare seconds, then I would try to go for Aaron Jones. I would go for Joe Mixon. Maybe you could push for Derrick Henry, somebody like that. That would be how I would look at the running back position, is not trying to do anything crazy, just going for good producing veteran players that are cheaper, especially now, because I think you have this window right now where your team is a little could be pushing towards a contending window in 2024. So if you can do that stuff now, then you might get somebody cheaper than if Joe Mixon is a top 10 running back by week 5. He might not be as cheap to acquire at that point. The wide receiver position, it would basically be trading up. So if you can find a way to turn Wicks, Franklin, and Sutton into a better wide receiver 4, who's actually like a wide receiver 3, like just turn all of those guys into, I need a list of wide receivers, can you turn all of them into like Pickens or Evans or BTJ, somebody like that? Like, if you can get up into that kind of range for those 3, there's another good quality wide receiver for you to start. And then just kind of keep doing that with the wide receiver position to get leaner, and allows you to have some more extra depth at the wide receiver or the running back position. So I don't know if that necessarily answered your question, but that's kind of what I would be looking at with your roster. Tunchi with a $10 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much, Tunchi. Buy low on Christian Watson, ? Seemed like he was still the number 1 when healthy. Reports say hamstring issues could be fixed. Feels like he's one of the cheapest players with wide receiver upside. I've been like pretty anti Christian Watson since he was coming out of college. I think if you want a cheaper wide receiver that has wide receiver 1 upside, I would personally be looking at Jameson Williams. But I mean, Watson is fine. I mean, if you look at all the wide receivers that are around him, like, at least this is in May ADP, I would prefer Jaden Reed on his own team. I would prefer Keon Coleman. I prefer like JSN, BTJ. I mean, there's not really anybody behind him who has the upside that Christian Watson has. You're looking at like Deontay and Keenan and Godwin and Kirk. Those guys are all probably going to produce similarly to Watson on like a points per game level. Watson, of course, is going to have the higher peaks and valleys, but the other guys are going to be kind of more consistent. I guess he's fine. Like I'm not really going out and targeting Christian Watson, but yeah, if you want to, like he's just never been a player that I personally have wanted to invest in, and that's been going all the way back to before he even got drafted. So that's my personal opinion of Watson. And Jameson Williams, I think, is a cheaper guy that you could go after for similar wide receiver one upside. Oh my goodness, I'm not even gonna. I'm so sorry. Can I say Kai? Does Kai work? Because I'm not Kai Noah. That might be right. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but thank you so much for the $5 super chat. If you are in a 32-team Dynasty League where you get all the players from rosters, offense and defense to trade, what would be your top picks? I have the 7th pick overall. So 32-team Dynasty League where you get all the players from a roster to trade. So you have is this a rookie 7th overall pick or is this a startup 7th overall pick? Kai also does work. Good. Awesome. But yeah, I feel like I need a little bit more information here. You don't got to drop another super chat. You can just throw it down in the chat and we can just work off of it. Gives me a reason to drink some water. Stay hydrated, people. 32. I've been in one 32-team Dynasty League once before. This is probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it was a full IDP, full offense and everything like that. And it was also salary cap as well, too. It was pretty crazy. But I turned a team around pretty quickly into where the team went from like being at the bottom of the division. It was a 32-team league where every team was an NFL team. So I was bottom in the division. I was the Cleveland Browns. So the team was bottom in the AFC North. I flipped it to being first in the AFC North. Try to compete for a couple years, and then I just didn't really like the league. So I bowed out. But that's what you get whenever you draft Kareem Hunt and hit on a couple good salary cap veterans. You get all the players from the Chiefs or Eagles or Bengals. Okay, 32 players each picks an NFL team. So you are 7th to pick an NFL team, and you get that entire roster. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to assume. Let's rank this out. This will be fun. Let's rank this out. I'm just gonna have a list of NFL teams. I can rack them off all in my head, but I'm just so I can list them. So if we were, this is kind of like a rough ranking, but I'd imagine Kansas City would be near the top. Philly would probably be up there just because of the number of offensive players. They have a good defense too. Dallas would probably be up there. San Francisco. Houston might have bumped up into that kind of range. Baltimore's in there. Miami's in there. I would say if you can get any of those 7 or 8 teams that I just listed, that would probably be the most ideal. Because you kind of can't go all the way in for offense because you also get the defensive players as well too, like you said. So like you can't like lean in entirely into just like really, really good offenses with really bad defenses. Like Arizona, I think would be like a really fun team. You get Kyler, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, you get Connor and Benson and all them too. Like I think they would just be a fun team to have, but they don't really have a defense. Packers are so young. That would be an interesting one too. This is a very interesting thought process of just like ranking out these teams when you include defenses. Who are you trying to go for, Kai? Because again, I'd imagine that KC's gone. I'd imagine San Francisco's gone. Probably Philly and Dallas as well. Oh, Detroit would be on that list. Detroit's on that short list too. I just completely skipped over them. Atlanta would kind of be another fun team too. Cousins, Bijan, Pitts in London, but their defense is kind of spotty as well. Oh, you got the Eagles. Oh, excellent. Yeah, they were on the short list, so that was great. I'm down for that. You get the whole offense, obviously. Their defense is actually really solid too. They can rack up some sacks. Um, hopefully they fix some of the or hopefully they address some of the secondary issues. So hopefully that works out for them. But is it were my teams kind of like the teams that I kind of identified as like these are kind of sort of the top 10? Was that kind of correct? KC, San Fran, Dallas. You got Philly at 7, Detroit, maybe Baltimore and like did Houston go in the top 10? They're an ascending team. I'm just really curious about this league now because it's just you're just picking teams. That's a really interesting way to do a startup. That's fun. All right. So let's keep going here. Kai, you can keep us updated and keep us going here. But Here for the Memes hit us with another $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Here for the Memes. Love to see you here basically every single week that I do this. So I appreciate you heavily, man. Watched your last vid about dynasty assets being worthy. Check my one team out: Lamar, Bryce, Kyron, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, Garrett, humble level brag after watching. That's I love this so much that you just were like, you know what? I'm gonna send in a $10 super chat and I'm just gonna shout my team out on how freaking disgusting this is right now. That's a disgusting team. I remember helping you out and doing some of these starts to decisions, some of the trades as well too. Brees, RB1, of course. I love it. I love it. This is a fantastic team. The only thing it's basically the same thing that sorry, I can't remember who it was. We talked about Hawk for a couple teams have already talked about Hawk. Peter had Hawk, Robert had Hawk, but just basically everybody who has Hawk should have some sort of a backup option. So that's something that you would probably have to go for here for the memes is finding like an Evan Ingram, a Jake Ferguson, maybe you get somebody even cheaper than that as like a contending or producing tight end for your contending roster. That's the only thing. But I mean, the rest of your roster is disgusting. Lions, Chiefs, Texans, Packers, Niners, Ravens, Bills, Colts, Bengals, Bears. Bears sneaking in there. That's pretty fun. Eagles are in there after the Ravens, before the Bills. That's where you picked, were the Eagles. Lions going first overall. I like it. Chiefs and Texans are in there. Packers. I am simultaneously surprised, but also not surprised by the Bengals and Bears. Colts, I think, is the most interesting pick out of this whole entire thing. I wonder if that's a Colts homer. Because I don't know. I mean, their offense is solid, I guess. Like you get Richardson, Pittman, JT, Adonai, Downs. I don't know if I would take the Colts over the Bengals or the Bears, or the Ravens went ahead. Even like the Jets would be kind of interesting too, because then you get the defense to come with that on top of Rodgers and Brees and Garrett. That wouldn't be that bad. The Colts are interesting. I'm interested in the Colts pick. All right, Tony with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Tony. 10 team super flex. Brissett is your third quarterback. You have 3 first-round picks, a couple extra seconds. Gibbs, Kyron, Drake, Reed, best at positions. Do I skip Brooks for Worthy and Thomas at 9-11, taking QB at 5 overall? So yeah, so you would get either McCarthy or May. I like that. So that kind of fills your need for the third QB. I honestly, so the way that I have it ranked right now is I have 109 is BTJ, 110 is Jonathan Brooks, and 111 is Xavier Worthy. So that is my current ranking for those 3, and then Bo Nix is 12. So if you have a preference of those 3, for me personally, my preference is BTJ at the 109. You then can probably just have 110 make that decision for you between Brooks and Worthy. My guess is that they would probably take Worthy. So then you get Jonathan Brooks at the 111, and then everything is kosher and solved, and we're all good. Now, if you really want Jonathan Brooks, Um, I'm not opposed to taking him at the 109 because then you get either Worthy and Thomas if you don't really see a difference between the two, but you just want to go for the running back. That works as well. Um, there is a world where you get two of your preferred guys out of this. If you really prefer one of the wide receivers, then 10 takes the other receiver, and then you get Brooks at 11. Um, Me personally, the way I would attack it is I would take BTJ at 9 and then just see which one of the two comes back to you at 11. But like I said, if you don't have a preference between the wide receivers, take Brooks at 9 and then take one of the wide receivers, whichever one falls back to you. That would be how I would go for it. You have Mahomes. So are you going for Xavier Worthy then for the stack? Is that like how is that the tiebreaker? How you're kind of valuing your preference of these guys? I'm not against it. I have all three of them in the same tier. I just prefer BTJ. I preferred BTJ before the draft, and I still prefer BTJ after the draft. Just to stay consistent there, because honestly, I think his situation is just as good, if not even slightly better, for the immediate. But if you want the stack, then take Worthy at 9, and then just see which one of them comes back to you between Brooks and Thomas at 11. That could work too. But yes, I would. Yeah, that's the way I would attack it. I would take Thomas at 9, and then just see what happens. Can you discuss ETN versus Devon Achane, Caleb? Yeah, pretty easily. Outside of a couple, Caleb and I text sometimes, so he asked me this question before. ETN versus Achane is very interesting debate because it is high volume versus high efficiency. So almost every single time when I'm debating between running backs, I'm going to take the running back that has more volume. Especially with these two running backs, like age is not, it kind of comes into play, but kind of ish doesn't. I guess ETN is 3 years older. Holy crap. I didn't realize it was that big of a difference. Why did I think Achane was like 23 already? I don't know. Anyway, so there is an age argument in there. I don't necessarily care as much because ETN still has this year and he has the first year option next year. So he could realistically just stay in the same situation with that before even signing a second contract for 2 more years. So that kind of mitigates some of the ageness of Achane. ETN is going to have more of a workload, so I lean more of the workload for this kind of a comparison. Achane is fantastic. Obviously, I mean, he's a great running back. I feel like just by de facto, you have to have a running back that's 22 years old who produced like he did in a short sample size, small sample size. You just have to have him in the top 10, top 12. But I find him to be the one guy that I just can't pull the trigger on. Like, I don't feel comfortable with him as my RB1 on my roster, whereas I feel very comfortable with ETN as an RB1 on my roster. Now, Dynasty, I mean, if the way you build out teams, if Achane's your RB1, then that's probably still just as good. But I just don't feel comfortable if I were like building out like a redraft team, so to speak, or trying to compete in 2024. I don't feel necessarily comfortable with Achane as my RB1, whereas I do with ETN. So again, it's just a volume thing. And that's really all it comes down to for me whenever I'm debating between these two guys, and how I would rank them. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything more onto that for you, Caleb. Hit that like button. Thank you, Joshua, so much. Puts out one of the best content in the industry. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you. Have you ever seen a QB Horde strategy win a league from Drew? I have never seen it win a league in year one, because when you do the startup and somebody does a QB Horde stuff after a startup, and for those of you that don't know, this is mainly like a super flex or a 2 QB strategy, where in a startup draft, you just kind of take all the quarterbacks, not like all the quarterbacks, but like for your first 4 or 5 picks, everybody else kind of goes for 1, maybe 2 guys. You're going for 4 or 5 of these guys, and then the idea is to then trade away those quarterbacks later to quarterback needy teams. And then you might be able to like charge them a a QB tax, so to speak, after the fact. But then 10 or 11 teams in your league can basically just not trade with you, and then you don't really have good assets outside of the quarterbacks, and everybody else just kind of blocks you out of the league. I've seen that happen a lot too. So I've never seen a QB Horde strategy win a league in year one, just because they've prioritized the quarterback position so much that they don't have the other players, the other positions. But I have seen it work in the future where teams do start to get desperate. Teams do want to go for the quarterback. Maybe there's some compromising happening. Maybe either the team that went QB Horde has lowered the tax, so to speak. So they're not asking for 115, 120% value. They're asking for 105% value, or even just like fair value for the quarterback, because then they're getting upset that they're not winning and they want to have the get rid of all these quarterbacks because they're just burning roster spots and points on their bench. So that compromise can happen. I've also seen the compromise where teams that need quarterbacks then just say, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to pay the price and I'll figure it out later. So then they acquire their quarterback. The QB Horde guy gets good value for his QBs, and then he ends up doing well with all of that. So I've seen it work multiple different ways, and I have seen QB Horde teams win a league, just not immediately. This isn't my go-to strategy for this. I generally just like to attack the QB position as I need it, basically, and not to really have excess. I will kind of go for an extra QB3 or an extra QB4 if good value is following, or if good value is falling in startup drafts. And because then it just kind of becomes like a stock at that point, like you're just kind of waiting for people to realize that they need quarterbacks in season if their guys get hurt. And not to say that I'm then flipping them for more than what I paid for them, but just like, quarterbacks hold value very well. So I'm willing to do that. Just I'm not personally the guy that's like, ooh, first 5 rounds of startup, let me grab all these quarterbacks. So that's a good question. That's a very interesting question for sure, Drew. Dustin with a $5 super chat. What are the optimal 2 to 3 draft positions to choose from if you have a choice of draft slot in a startup? So you have a 12-team Superflex tight end premium with a 3rd round reversal. Very interesting. So when I like to look at where I want to draft in startups, is generally my Superflex startup strategy is I want to leave the first round with a quarterback. So what position can I put myself in to then leave the first round with like a quarterback that's worth drafting in the first round? So like usually that's like your top 7 or 8 picks. Maybe you can get lucky and get that down to like 9 or 10 if somebody prioritizes Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase, or depending on how big the premium is, if they go for a tight end in the first round. That happened a couple years ago with like Kyle Pitts was like a top 6 pick in Superflex startups, even some of them without tight end premiums. But that might be something that if you know your league, you can kind of gamble on that more at the 9-10 spot. If you don't know your league, maybe lean in a little bit closer to the middle of the round, so then you can still land like a Lamar Jackson, a Joe Burrow. For me, I would put Kyler Murray in there. Maybe you get Anthony Richardson. If you're a big Caleb fan, you can leave the first round with Caleb, maybe a little bit later in the first at like the 10, 11, 12 spot. And I think the farther back that you can get in the first round too, where you're still in that kind of top range for quarterbacks, and then you're able to then bounce back in the second round pretty quickly, have the flexibility that if quarterbacks are falling more, for example, if you get Lamar Jackson at like the 107 or something like that, and then at the 204 or whatever it ends up being, you get Kyler or Dak. That sounds like a crazy startup start. But if something like that were to happen, then you have the flexibility to then take your QB2, or you can grab a top tight end, depending on the premium, or you can grab a wide receiver. So I like having that flexibility in the early second round to kind of adjust to see how the board is already shaking up from the first 12 to 15 picks. And then with a 3rd round reversal, then you get a very early 3rd round pick too. So 3rd round reversal, for anybody that doesn't know, the first 2 rounds are snake. So 101 to 112. And then you flip that, right? So 201 to 212 is just the opposite of that order. But then starting in the third round, you then flip the reversal of the snake. So then the team that picked in the 12th spot picked 12, 13, and then they'll pick 25 at 3.01. So I like being on the top end of that turn as well too, because then you get obviously you're one of the few teams that get like that get 3 top 30 overall players if you're in the top 5 picks of the third round, which means you got to be in the bottom 5 picks of the first round, which actually ends up working out really well for my personal strategy, because then I could leave with 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds, and then I can I get a top wide receiver and then a quarterback in the third, or I get 2 top quarterbacks and then I get my wide receiver in the third round, which could be, I'm looking at May ADP right now. Like that could be Garrett Wilson or Malik Neighbors, or maybe like Puka or AJ Brown slide a little bit too, if people are really going heavy on quarterbacks or tight ends in a premium league. So that would be kind of my preferred range, kind of is somewhere from like 7 to 10 probably would be where I would be looking to get. John's here. What's up, John? John's going to start answering everybody's questions. John, we had a very interesting conversation earlier that Kai is in a 32-team league where the startup is like the draft is only 32 picks. Everybody gets 1 pick, and you just select an NFL team and you get that team's entire offense and defense. So for example, like the 101 in this format was the Detroit Lions, 102 was Kansas City. He had 7 and he took Philly. So you missed that conversation, but it was very, very interesting. Just to kind of talk about drafting entire NFL teams for your fantasy football league. It was very interesting. Nathan, as a true contender with only running back concerns, would you rather Jonathan Brooks at the 201 or trade the pick for Rashad White? Wow. Personally, I think I would rather just have Jonathan Brooks. I think if I were to actually rank running backs, I would still have Rashad White ahead of Jonathan Brooks, but they would be very, very close, and if not even in the same tier. So for me, I would probably still just go for Jonathan Brooks. You get to hit the reset on the age button, on the rookie contract button. For me, there's no personal concerns for Brooks about his workload or efficiency in the NFL. I mean, we haven't seen it yet. He could be bad, but from what I'm projecting based on what he did in college, and hopefully as we move into 2025, 1 more year removed from the ACL injury, that efficiency kind of picks up in Carolina's offense, in a Canales offense that was fantastic for Kenneth Walker, fantastic for Rashad White last year. So I'm hoping that that just transfers over to Brooks. So I would prefer Brooks here. Just take the younger guy who I think has just as much, if not even more, upside than Rashad White, without some of the volume concerns, efficiency concerns, not so much possible replacement concerns, but just you get to hit the reset button. It was some serious RNG for Kai for sure. Yeah. He lucked out. He got 7. He got Philly. That'd be. I can't imagine being 32. You get stuck with the Patriots. Oh, that would suck. That is some serious RNG. J-Dub have the 1 through 3 in a 10-team 1 quarterback. Should I move the 1 to 3 for Rashad White and the 2.01? I already have Chase, Puka, Ayuk, JSN, Rice, Ridley. Holy crap. And you're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. I would prefer Odunze over Rashad White. The 2.01, it's kind of a nice pick, and it's kind of not at the same time. I would still prefer Rome Odunze. Honestly, I think if you were to look at the running back position, I would be trying to go up. So how can I turn that 1.03 into Jonathan Taylor or Travis Etienne or Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson or somebody like that? Obviously, you're probably going to have to add to the 1.03 in order to do that, but you have all these wide receivers that you can work with, where how can I get up in the running back position instead of kind of going down and tearing down, so to speak, from the pick. So imagine having Chase, Puka, Ayuk. You get Marvin Harrison and Neighbors in there too. There's like your top 5 wide receivers. That's insane. then you still have JSN and Rice. But if you can basically trade the 103 and JSN, and can you get Gibbs? Can you get Bijan? Can you get Brees? Can you get Jonathan Taylor? I would much prefer to do something like that than going down to Rashad White. Boom, boom, boom. Calvin Austin or Greg Dortch? Decent stashes, or would you rather take the chance on a rookie wide receiver drafted in the 5th round or later? Good question. So I don't really want Calvin Austin. I'm not really all that interested in him. There's just so many names there in the Steelers right now. And they add in Roman Wilson too. Van Jefferson's now there. Not really interested. Dortch, I think, is interesting just because Dortch plays a different role in that offense than like everybody else. Like obviously MHJ and Michael Wilson are probably going to be like the 2 outside guys. But then Dortch, I think, could find himself a role as like their primary slot guy. And basically replace the Rondale Moore role. Not to say that was a valuable role, but Dortch has had production whenever he's been able to see a decent target share. So if injuries were to happen, like he could be like a Khalil Shakir kind of guy just naturally. And then if injuries were to happen, he could get back into kind of having 6, 7, 8 targets a game in that kind of a role. So I'd prefer Dortch of the 2. If you got to stash one, I would probably still prefer a rookie wide receiver. Like I would take Jermaine Burton over them. I would take Jalen Polk over them. These are very obvious guys. I feel like, not Polk, Javon Baker. That's what I meant to say. I would take Baker and I would take Jermaine Burton over both of them. I would take Corley over them, Troy Franklin. I would take Malik Washington. I would take Tez Walker. I'd probably take Cowing as well too. Maybe just throw the dart throw on him as a rookie that we haven't seen before, and who knows if he's even better than Pearsall. People want to think that he is, but we're not necessarily sure, you know. So I would take all those guys as rookies over Dortch. Austin, I feel like you can just cut right now. Yep, Malik Washington over Dortch. Brendan Rice is honestly not even that bad of a stash 2 over Dortch, just to see what happens. Because I mean, we could have that, like that's a similar conversation. Like a lot of people think that McConkey's better than Brandon Rice, but are we necessarily sure? Rice could be better than Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer. I mean, who's to say? Like, it's probably not going to be anything great, but when you're talking about this low down on your bench, having upside shots on guys that could maybe do something, Rice over Dortch or Austin might be an interesting play too. Or alternatively, you could just have handcuff running backs instead of using roster spots on both these guys. Just any sort of backup might be a better use of roster spots than either. Josh, what's up, man? Sorry I got into your questions so late. I'm just now getting to 12:15. It's 12:45, so I'm 30 minutes behind on questions. But thank you for coming in. Trying to trade Hertz in a rebuilding team, looking at Jaden Daniels and Pearsall. Should I at least be asking for an extra first on top of that? Don't know what to do. Yes, you should. So I'm not the biggest Pearsall fan. I think he's like a early to mid 2nd round pick in Superflex drafts. So to me, if you're flipping this into like rookie draft context, like I don't think we can just give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll say the 103 and the 2.03. So then he has both of those picks. They turned into Daniels and Pearsall. I'm not trading Jalen Hurts for 103 and 203. I need another first on top of that. If not, even honestly, 2 firsts. Especially if those firsts, I'm assuming that since we already have rookie names for this, that your rookie draft is passed by. So if now we're talking about 103, 203, and a 2025 first, I still don't think that's enough. That's too much unknown. To where I probably need another first round pick. And if that's a 26 first, that still doesn't feel like enough. Even though on paper that is like 3 first round picks, one of them is a year from now, 2 of them is 2 years from now. There's too much time waiting for these picks values to be realized that you're just going to perennially be in a rebuild. Whereas if you have Jalen Hurts, that could speed up your rebuild way faster than just trading him for 3 first round picks and waiting for 2 of them to mature essentially like a CD or something like that at the bank. And it's just too much time. So I think you need more. If not, honestly, instead of more first, you need some stability. You need some production or some known value might be a better way to quantify this trade. So instead of saying at least an extra first, how can you get maybe like another like wide receiver in here? Like, can you replace that with a looking at my list here, like, can you get like Ayuk in there or London? Like those would make me feel better if you have that kind of. Can you get like Trey McBride or Sam Laporte? I don't know what this guy has, or maybe it's another quarterback. Like maybe he has Brock Purdy or something like that. Where he gets to cash in on two guys that are more unknown for just one elite top 5 guy. That might still work out, and then you get the shot on Persall as well too. So maybe more known value or production coming back to you is actually better than just asking about extra first round picks, especially those picks are 25 and 26 would probably be how I would look at it. Jerome with the $7 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much, Jerome. 10-team start 11 super flex half PPR. Justin Jefferson or Devonta Smith, the 104 and the 2.06. I just want Justin Jefferson. That 1.04, it's going to be probably Malik Neighbors. I think we can just insert Malik Neighbors into that pick. Maybe it's Shane Daniels, but more than likely it's probably Neighbors. And I think that makes it easier when you're comparing, would you package Neighbors and Devonta Smith, do the 2-for-1 at the wide receiver, go up to get Justin Jefferson? I'm doing that. I feel like I preach about that every single week that we do AMAs. And people ask how to make their teams better. I'm saying do 2-for-1s at the wide receiver position. This is exactly what I would be trying to do. And just take Justin Jefferson. So if you already have JJ, I don't think it's enough. I think it's a solid offer. I definitely don't think it's a bad offer, just not the way that I play. And I want to feel like I'm selling Justin Jefferson for a haul or an overpay. It's going to hurt to trade Justin Jefferson. But it will hurt a little bit less if the other person feels like they're like really giving up a lot and you feel like you're really getting a massive haul. To me, this doesn't feel like a massive haul. If we were able to bump up Neighbors to, it's hard to kind of bump up off of Neighbors because then you're going to get to a point where it's too much. But if it was Garrett Wilson, I'd probably feel better about it. If it like instead of Neighbors in the 2.06, if it was just Garrett Wilson, I'd probably feel better about it. If it was AJ Brown or Puka with Devonta Smith and you got to kick back like a third, I'd feel a lot better about that too. That's probably unreasonable. Probably doesn't necessarily get done. But that's what I want to feel when I'm trading away Justin Jefferson is I feel like I am still getting solid production back and not just like adding extra depth for the sake of depth. I tweeted out about this yesterday that I feel like people just overvalue depth and don't value stud guys enough. Because the other part of this too is, let's say you're like, oh well, I can start Smith and Neighbors in a start 11. That's true, but you're not considering the fact then too of the wide receiver that you're replacing to then start Smith and Neighbors, right? So you're not just comparing Jefferson to Smith and Neighbors. You're comparing Jefferson and your 11th best player on your team, on your roster, that you would be throwing into your starting lineup versus Smith and Neighbors. So there's that points per game comparison as well too. Again, I don't think it's a bad trade. Not a bad offer by any means. I just prefer Justin Jefferson. Chris just got an offer in a 12-team super flex. He contender being offered Herbert IU Pitman and a 25 first for Hertz, AJ Brown, and Swift. I can tell you right now, I just want Hertz and AJ Brown. I would take Hertz over Herbert. Honestly, I would take Hertz over Herbert and the 25 first. So that knocks those out. I would take AJ Brown over Ayuk and Pittman and Swift. I mean, I would take Pittman there, but you're getting all the other added value, I think, in my opinion, on the other two sides, that losing value from going from Pittman to Swift. And it's not necessarily a lot of value. I just want Hertz and AJ Brown and Swift. Yeah. Better players. In all regards. Dylan, 10-team PPR 2 quarterback, Barkley, DK 204, 304, 309 for Ayuk, ETN, and the 1.08. Ooh. I'm taking the Ayuk side here. Ayuk and I would take Ayuk over DK. Barkley and ETN, at least dynasty wise, are very, very close. Barkley's probably going to outscore ETN for sure. There's a very good probability that that happens, but I don't think it's that big of a difference to where I'm not necessarily sad that I'm losing Barkley's production to get ETN's production, especially when I can upgrade from DK to Ayuk, and especially when I can upgrade the 204 and the 304 to go get the 1.08. So now you just added in Odunze or Bowers, or maybe you get May or McCarthy there at that 1.08. There you go. So I'm taking the Ayuk, ETN, and the 1.08 side on this one. Kevin's asking, how do you view the big three wide receivers this year compared to the established guys, Lamb, JJ, Chase, etc., for the long term? The big three wide receivers this year compared to the established guys. I honestly so Marvin Harrison is probably going to find his way into this top 3 tier within a couple years. I don't know if Neighbors or Odunze are going to be able to get there, just because I think all these guys are going to continue to produce. That's the very interesting thing about all these wide receivers right now. All 3 of these guys are 25 and younger. JJ and Chase are 24. So if we're talking about it's kind of like if you would asked me a couple years, not a couple years ago, but 10 years ago, right? How does the 2014 class of OBJ, Evans, and we'll just say Allen Robinson or Devontae Adams or somebody like that, how do they compare to the current established guys of Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, AJ Green, all those guys from 10 years ago, essentially. And if we say that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to do what OBJ did, then he's going to have the opportunity, obviously, to enter into that upper echelon with early monster production. But you look at the rest of the 2014 class, it was a fantastic class. Evans has been amazing. He's a Hall of Famer. Devontae Adams, a Hall of Famer, amazing. Took a couple years to get there, but that might be kind of how Odunze works. It might take a couple years for Odunze to get his feet going, to get his feet under him and get going. And then has amazing production later on. Same with you look at Brandon Cooks or Allen Robinson or Sammy Watkins, fizzled out. But it's going to be really hard for all these guys to get into this upper echelon just because Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Chase are just that good. And they're going to continue to be that good for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So we might have a massive tier at one point where we're talking about the upper echelon of wide receivers being about 5, 6 names instead of 3 or 4 right now. Maybe you already consider it 5 if you include Marvin Harrison Jr. But then you also you got to include Puka into here too. AJ Brown is still 26. He can go for another couple years. Garrett Wilson, if he breaks out, he's 23. If Wilson breaks out, then he's going to get bumped up ahead of Neighbors as well too. He's already is. But if he actually does what he does, or we're hoping that he does, he could have it. There's a lot of really good wide receivers right now in the league. I just don't know. And I don't know if I'm answering your question on this either, Kevin, but I just don't know if any of these guys outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. ever bump any of these guys in value. They're all just going to be that good. 1 second, Zach. 12-team Superflex PPR start 10. Would you give Caleb or Herbert and London for Mahomes? Yes. I would prefer to give Justin Herbert. Honestly, I'm terrified for the production for this year for 2024. Honestly, I would do it with either quarterback to add London just to go up and get Mahomes. But I would, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose to give Herbert and London for Mahomes. Then that way you have Mahomes, Dak for the production, Caleb for the upside for the future. You still have all those other great wide receivers as well too. But I would be willing to do it for Herbert Herbert and London for Mahomes. I would do it with Caleb, but I prefer to give up Herbert. That's another good point from John, though. If you don't necessarily need the quarterback upgrade, I mean, the quarterback, you're never going to be sad to have Patrick Mahomes on your team, especially if Justin Herbert does not have the production that I think he will have this year, or has the production that I think he will have, which would not be good production. You're never going to be sad to have Patrick Mahomes. But it is a good question on whether this is necessary, so to speak. Don't know what the rest of your roster looks like, but maybe you move that over for a running back or a tight end, not necessarily to use Herbert in London, but how can you move some of these assets to then get better in other positions that you're not as strong in? But at the end of the day, I would still do Herbert in London. Dylan, I would still do it with JSN too. Honestly, I would prefer to keep DK over JSN. So if you can include JSN in there, then I would do that. I'm still taking the Ayuk and ETN side. But I would prefer to keep DK over JSN. Caleb has the 102, 104, 110. I already have Olave, Waddle, Higgins, and Puka at wide receiver. Should I just take Neighbors at the 104 or try and trade down to 107 plus 111? Good question. So I think you're assuming probably that you're getting Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 1.02, right? So then you've added Marvin Harrison Jr. to this list, and now you're asking if you should add Malik Neighbors. I'm not against taking Malik Neighbors. Honestly, depending on what your quarterbacks look like, I'd be interested to see if you can just move 104 to 103. I wouldn't add 110 to do it, but you have like a second or something, and the other person doesn't necessarily care. Then you get Jaden Daniels. So that could be an option. I'm not opposed to also moving down from the 104 to the 107, 111, because then you could probably still get Odunze or Bowers. And then you also get two of BTJ, Brooks, or Worthy with the 10 and 11, right? So that's probably better. I don't know if that is more of a preferred option than just taking Malik Neighbors to avoid having all these wide receivers. But this is something where I'm looking at all these wide receivers. It might be better to have multiple options on guys that can ascend in value, like Odunze and BTJ, we'll just say. And then you also get Brooks, maybe at like the 110. And then just do a bunch of 2-for-1s. You know, always what I'm going for is always trying to see if I can do some 2-for-1s. How can I turn Olave and T. Higgins into Amon-Ra or Jamar Chase? How can I turn Waddle and Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. into AJ Brown? You know, how can I turn Olave and BTJ into Amon-Ra? All those kind of things is I would be trying to move up at the wide receiver position since you're going to have so many guys. What would you do with Michael Mayer in a 12-team super flex non-tight end premium? You have Komet and Pat Freiermuth as well. Bowers is unattainable. You just hold on to Michael Mayer and wait to see if something happens. It's really, really rough. Scotty Scheffler birdied the 18th. Oof. That's amazing. Anyway, you just have to sit with Michael Mayer. I don't really know what you can do with him outside of just trading him for like a third, and I don't even know if that's worth it. Maybe you could just package him and Pat Freiermuth and you get like a second, like a 25 second. That might be better than just having both those guys eating up roster space. You could just move over to a liquid asset like a second. Yeah, it's kind of rough. You can't drop him, but I don't know what you would get for him in a trade. AJ, in a tight end premium league, is it worth moving just Jackson Smith and Jigba for Pitts just for the extra half PPR? Yes, I think so. Because I mean, you could kind of look at. I mean, if you just assume that they both have kind of similar production, right? Like they both, let's just say, have 70 receptions for 950 yards, and they both score 5 touchdowns, right? Like I feel like that's pretty reasonable for both of them. That might be a little high for Pitts, maybe, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But If they both have a basically similar stat line, you're going to get an extra half PPR point for all those receptions. So Pitts is going to outscore JSN by those extra 30 to 35 points, or 40, depending on if if they're in the 70s to 80s in receptions, and their yards and touchdowns are pretty similar. That's worth it to me, to move on from JSN and just go get Pitts. So I'd be willing to take Pitts over JSN, in a tight end premium. Mike, give London get Kincaid in a 12-team start 11, 0.75 tight end premium. Interesting. This is, but isn't similar to the last question, because I think London is going to handedly outproduce Kincaid statistically. The 0.75, though, closes that gap a lot quicker than the 0.5. I'd keep Drake London. I think in a 0.75 tight end premium, if you have London, I want to get into the Hawk, McBride, Laporta, Bowers level of tight end. I don't think Kincaid is in there. And I'm still worried about Dawson Knox, to be honest with you. Everybody's so excited about Kincaid. They're so in on him breaking out this year because they traded away Diggs, but like Knox is still there. If they still have to run 2 tight end sets, I don't know if they're going to run more 11 personnel because they don't have as many good wide receivers. So maybe 12 personnel is going to be more of their base set, which would get Kincaid and Knox on the field at the same time, but I don't necessarily know if that's beneficial to Kincaid. So I'd still take Drake London. Uneaten Sandwich, I'm so sorry. I just saw your $2 super chat in here from a couple minutes ago. Trade Kendre Miller for a 2025 second. Yes, I would. I get the argument for Kendre Miller. Justin just made that argument in a video pretty recently about players to buy if you're rebuilding. But I think even Justin would agree with me that I would just take a 25 second over Kendre Miller, because Kamara's still there this year. It's possible he's still there next year. Like, we're hoping that Kamara becomes a cap casualty next year. It's kind of like the JSN situation, except it's worse because at the running back position, you're not all on the field at the same time like you are for wide receivers. So Kendre could just be the backup for 2 more years. Maybe he's this year's Jerome Ford. That's like if Alvin Kamara gets hurt for a large majority of the game. Knock on wood that doesn't actually happen. But that's what you're hoping for at best. And I would still trade right now Jerome Ford for a 2nd round pick. Maybe not in season you would do that. You'd use the production, but unless you're banking on an injury, I would take the 2nd round pick over Kendre Miller. You're surprised that I would do Caleb in London for Mahomes? But Mahomes is fun. Mahomes is fun. I get both sides of that trade. I get both sides. Where was I? Gary, 10-team PPR Superflex. Give Herbert, DJ Moore, Dell, and receive Stroud and Rice. Ooh. I take the Herbert side on this one. Yeah. John said stay put as well too. Yep. I would. Because the upgrade from Herbert to Stroud is really nice, but I feel like the 2 wide receivers and Rashee Rice are kind of what's throwing off this deal. I would probably just stick with Herbert, DJ Moore, and Tank Dell. And then I do agree. John said if you can drop Dell and Rice and you just make it a little bit smaller and you just do Herbert and DJ Moore for CJ Stroud, I'm all in for that one. But it just feels like the Dell and the Rice kind of mess it up right now, which I don't know if that necessarily is the right call because they feel like similar wide receivers in terms of like value. I mean, there's stuff going on with Rice right now that maybe that doesn't make them similar. But I would do Herbert and DJ Moore for Stroud. I would do that. So if you can drop Rice and Dell off this thing, then I would do that. MSJ at 1 and 2. Then I was thinking a quarterback at 1 and 7. Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, that could work too. where you get a quarterback to kind of come in and be the younger guy to take over for Stafford and Rodgers in a couple years. That could work. I don't hate that at the 107. And then also you get BJ or Worthy at the 111. I'm down for that too. Or you could try to see if you could, move up to the 103. I don't know what else you have to move up. I wouldn't give the 110 to move up, but if you have like a second, try and see if you can move up to Jane Daniels. What rookies do you have the most shares of across your portfolio? So, John, here's the interesting part. I'm in 3 Dynasty Leagues. So I can't say that I have a portfolio. I'm in 3 Dynasty Leagues, and one of them haven't done their rookie draft yet. I think it's this weekend. It's the rookie draft. And one, actually, in both of those rookie drafts, I did not really have picks. I tried to trade in, but people would not let me trade in. So in the one rookie draft, I left with Kamani Vidal and Tyrone Tracy. In the other rookie draft, I left with Ray Davis. I tried to get Vidal on that one too. Who else did I draft? Tyrone Tracy. Apparently, I'm a big Tyrone Tracy fan. Yep. So one league was Davis and Tracy. The other league was Vidal and Tracy. So Tracy has a 100% draft rate in both my leagues. And then we'll see what my other rookie draft does this weekend. That draft, though, I have the 105 and the 106. I think. I know I have 2 first-round picks, and they're both in the top half. And I believe it's the 5 and the 6. I'm trying to look it up, but I'm logged out. Wrong password. You're in 5 leagues and only have 1 rookie draft left. So who do you have? 3 neighbors, Penix and Garendo, Labe, 2 Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brooks. Nice. 3 neighbors is great. 2 Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and Brooks is great. I tried to trade in for BTJ and Brooks in both of my drafts so far. Nobody bit on those. I might see if I can trade back from my 105, 106. I just looked it up. That's who I have. 1 Caleb and Daniels too. Nice. Yeah. So I have 105, 106 on this rookie draft this weekend. I might try to see if I can trade back, and because I don't need 2 quarterbacks. And I'm wondering if I can trade back from like the Odunze level, if I can go back to BTJ and then also get or go back to Brooks or somebody like that and then get another good pick on top of that. Brendan, thoughts on Troy Franklin? Seemed like a good prospect to me, but fell to pick 1.102. Not 1.02, pick 102. I'm a sucker for Troy Franklin. I still am in on him. I have him ranked in that early to mid second. Basically, all the wide receivers from McConkey, Leggett, Coleman, Polk, Pearsall, Adonai, Franklin. That's like the 7. Are all in a tier for me. And Franklin is a part of that despite the draft capital. Just because, I mean, the draft capital was great, or not great, but the landing spot was great. So he's back with Bo Nix. I think arguably he's the best wide receiver on the team. I think he's better than Courtland Sutton right now at this point in their careers. I think he's better than Marvin Mims. He was absolutely a better prospect than Marvin Mims, despite the draft capital. Without the draft capital, he's a better prospect than Marvin Mims. Judy's gone. Dulcich is coming back from injury. I think Troy Franklin has a fantastic opportunity. I'm not going to say that he's like this year's Puka or anything like that as like a day 3 guy that breaks out, but I would not be surprised if he is way more productive than a lot of guys that were taken on day 2 immediately in year 1. So I still have Troy Franklin as like a mid-ish second round pick in Superflex earlier in 1 quarterback leagues. and I still believe that he is. I have yet to see the reason why he actually fell. Like if there was like a health concern or something like that, like it comes out like, how Tyjae Spears like doesn't have cartilage in his knee. Like I could understand that more as to why he fell. If the reason why he fell is just because the NFL just didn't think he was good, I'm sorry. I know I'm not. If I was as good of an evaluator as NFL scouts, I could be in the NFL, and that's why I'm here, just talking on YouTube. So I very much understand my place on that, but I think that the NFL got that one wrong. If the reason why that they passed on Franklin until the 4th round is talent, I think they got that one wrong. So I'm still willing to take the bets on him, despite the 4th round draft capital. Any thoughts on deep sleepers like Thrash, Anai Smith, and Johnny Wilson looking for upside on the taxi squad? I don't really like any one of the 3 guys that you named here specifically. Sorry, not to like completely call you out on that. If I was looking for taxi squad guys, I would look at Labe, Malik Washington, Jacob Cowing, Jordan Travis. I don't know how to say the dude's last name, but Tip, the tight end for the Cardinals. Jared Wiley would be interesting as well too. Brennan Rice, I think, is another interesting one. I like those. I think these guys are fine. It's hard for a wide receiver to really break out, especially for the teams that they're on. Like Anai Smith, when is he ever going to see the field in Philadelphia? Same kind of with like Jamari Thrash. I don't really see a path to success for them to even see snaps, let alone have opportunity from those snaps. So normally I'd go after, running backs. I'd take the shot on a tight end. Eric All would be an interesting one too. Cade Stover, Garendo. That's who I would be looking at for taxi squad guys. Your new Mizuno metal irons are so nice, by the way. What was your last score? We just had the reason why I wasn't doing this stream last week is because it was my buddy's bachelor party. So we had 6 of us go golf outside of Pittsburgh, and we ended up doing a 3v3 scramble format. And we said that whoever was the winner was going to buy lunch or something like that at Burgatory. But my one buddy doesn't play golf, and he was on our team. So it was me, the buddy who doesn't play golf at all, like literally has never played more than just one par 3 course once. And then my other buddy, and then against like 3 solid golfers. And we ended up tying in the scramble. We both shot 5 over, both teams. Not to say that a large majority of my team was because of me, but it kind of was. We played at Tom's Run. So it's in Blairsville. It's about an hour, 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. So not really like in and around Pittsburgh, but it was Tom's Run. It's like one of the best courses in PA. So I hear. It was a very nice course. You played there a bunch? Yeah, there you go. It was a really nice course. It was the first time I played there, but it was so freaking wet, dude. It was awful. It was like drizzling on and off throughout the day, on top of the fact that it had already rained for like the previous like 2 days essentially. So it was wet and muddy and not as fun because of the weather, but the course was beautiful. I want to go back there when it's like an actually like nice sunny day. But +7 is great. Mizuno hot metal irons. If I didn't just buy a new iron set last year, I might have to take a look at them. I'm looking at a driver though. The driver might be next, but I don't know if I'll be able to get a driver this summer because I don't think I'm going to be able to play much after June. Construction people are here. But a driver's next on the agenda. If you're going to tier down from Jefferson to just wide receivers, rookie draft is over, so picks don't bring immediate payoff. What is your dream trade in return? Ooh, great question. So if I'm trading down from Justin Jefferson, there's only a handful really of wide receivers that I want to trade down from. From JJ. I think AJ Brown and another running back. Let's see. AJ Brown. Here, actually, let's use the analyzer. Using the DLF trade analyzer. Here, actually, let's do this. The trade background is back here. There we go. Okay. So AJ Brown was the first name that I thought of to trade down from Justin Jefferson to, and according this is in a superflex league, superflex evaluations. But some suggested additional players. Jonathan Brooks, I think, would be fun. Like moving down from JJ to AJ Brown and Jonathan Brooks, I think would be fun. I don't know if that necessarily feels like enough. Oh, there we go. It's only like a 40-point overpay. Normally, I would like that to be a little bit higher. So we can maybe look at where's Brooks in ADP? $10. Holy moly. He's RB10 already in ADP. So there, that answers that question between Brooks and Rashad White. But if you put in, I'm crafting out a trade. Something like that, where you get, and again, this is also super like league dependent based on who you have. But I would love to see if I could trade down from Jefferson and get two like quality top 10 guys at other positions. And if one of them being a running back, that kind of lowers the value of that asset coming back because it's a running back. As long as it's not like Hall or Bijan or somebody like that. But this would be something that I would like to try to do. You could move down from Jefferson and get Puka would be another interesting one too, depending on how people value Puka. Let's just type him in here because he's pretty similarly valued to AJ Brown. So, there you go. That's not bad there to move down from JJ. You get similar-ish production from Puka. You get an RB1, a guy that I think has top 5 value at the running back position for 2024 for like redraft. I think he's a top 5 redraft guy. So there's one right there. If you were to go down to Garrett, another similarly valued guy. All three of these guys feel so interchangeable. I don't feel great about that. All right, let's move off of that. What about if you really wanted to take a big swing down and go down to Drake London, you're gonna have to get a big time player back. Like this is where I would probably need. Yeah. London and Taylor. So those are, I don't know if they were great examples, but that's at least how I would kind of be looking at it. And again, super league dependent based on who else the team has that like has AJ Brown or has Puka or has London, who else they have on their team to fill that gap. But that's kind of what I would be looking at. Oh, sorry, Thomas. I'll get to yours in a second. I just saw Wessel was before. Does Cody Schrader have an opportunity to make the team and be a dynasty stash? I think that he has an opportunity to make the team, especially with Elijah Mitchell's continued injury struggles. Honestly, I can't say for certain that he's worse than Isaac Guerrero. And Shanahan, obviously, as we've seen, has never been a guy to throw draft capital out the window in favor of who just is the better player. We've seen that happen multiple times already, including their starting quarterback right now. So I think that he has a decent opportunity to make the team. And then hopefully if he does something with it, then that would be really fun too. So he would be on my short list of guys to stash instead of like Thrash or Anais Smith or Johnny Wilson. Schrader would be on that short list too. All right, Thomas, you got your rookie draft coming up next week. Rebuilding and finishing off your wide receiver room. Need some running backs. Who would you take at 382.02? in a 1 quarterback league. So 103, you get it, Remo Dunze. Congratulations. The 108, you might be able to get Jonathan Brooks there at the 1.08. That would depend on obviously like Worthy and BTJ going ahead. You probably also have to hope on Caleb going ahead too. That would be basically the formula for 5, 6, 7. And then you get Jonathan Brooks at 1.08, who would be best available then at that point. And I would agree with that. And then 2.02, you might sneak a Trey Benson at a 2.02 as well. But if you're not getting running backs there, like I wouldn't take Trey Benson at 108, and I wouldn't take like Corum or Lloyd or Wright at 2.02 just because you need running backs. It would probably be better if you could just trade them, trade those picks for running backs. You also got an offer of Saquon for the 108. I would take Saquon over the 108 in 1 quarterback league. Because another way to look at this too, value-wise, I think this trade is in favor of Saquon. So even though if you don't like Saquon, I think it would be easier to pivot off of Saquon for a running back that you actually do like instead of pivoting off the 1.08 for a running back that you do like. Kind of just like climb the ladder. So go from, it's kind of like turning the paperclip into a house kind of thing. Go from the 108, go to Saquon, then take Saquon and then go to ETN or Jonathan Taylor, or go even higher and go to Brees or somebody like that, or Gibbs. I think it's easier to get to a better running back that you actually want with Saquon than it is with the 1.08. Or worst case scenario, you take Saquon Barkley and then you get all the production that he gives you in 2024 and then figure it out next year. Not a bad deal. I would take Saquon over the 108. Ken in a 102 in a 16-team league. Pick Daniels, trade for a quarterback, 16-team super flex. Yeah, you have to take Jayden Daniels there. Trade back for 5 and 10. Hold up. Got to read the whole entire thing. This says 16-team superflex where you are able to start 1 quarterback and 2 superflex spots. You already have Kyler. You have to take Jayden Daniels. You have to. The most ideal situation of this is that you have all 3 superflex spots filled with quarterbacks. You have to take Jayden Daniels at the 1.02. I'm not trying to trade back to the 105 because honestly, there's risk there that you don't get a quarterback at the 105. So I would take Jayden Daniels. I think you have to. That's an insane league. Give me Jayden Daniels at the 102. The 102 in JSN for Justin Jefferson. Don't mind that at all. That's a good one. There's kind of like a Marvin. I'm assuming this is Marvin Harrison. If this is Malik Neighbors, then I want Justin Jefferson for sure. If this is Marvin Harrison, then I understand it a little bit more. And there's a way that you can kind of trade back if you want Marvin Harrison. Zach, you have your rookie draft tonight. You have the 1.01. Not sure whether to go Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb. Current Dynasty squad QBs are Goff and Richardson. Wide receivers are JJ Olave, Reed Smith. You should go Caleb Williams. That would be my decision if I was in your spot. Our rule, Justin and I's rule basically on this channel all offseason has been if you don't have 2 top 10 guys at the quarterback spot, you should take Caleb Williams. So you would fit under those parameters. Jared Goff is not a top 10 guy. So from that formula, Caleb Williams would be the pick of the 1.08. That's who I would pick if I was in your shoes. I'd take Caleb Williams. Your wide receivers are good too. Like you have solid wide receivers. But I would just take Caleb. Would you trade McCarthy and Dulcich for Jaden Reed? You have Kyler, T-Law, and Kincaid in 1 quarterback. Oh, 1 quarterback. Yes. In a 1 quarterback league, I would take Jaden Reed. And especially because you already have Kyler and T-Law as well too. Not that necessarily should influence your decision, so to speak, and like take a discount on the quarterback because you don't need him. But in a 1 quarterback league, I want Jaden Reed over McCarthy. Nick needs some quarterback help in 12-team Superflex tight end premium. Who should you target and what should you package? Quarterbacks are Love, Fields, May. Bunch of running backs, bunch of wide receivers. Excellent. I'm digesting. One second. So you have a lot of wide receivers. So I'd be wondering to see how you can move some of these wide receivers over to the quarterback spot. I'm just going to type some of these names in and just see what the analyzer gives me. So T. Higgins and Nico Collins, it says, could net you a Trevor Lawrence kind of a quarterback. It might get you Kyler. It might get you Anthony Richardson. It might get you Dak. So those are like, if you could trade away, T. Higgins and Nico Collins for one of those guys, Lawrence, Dak, Richardson, Kyler, any one of those guys, I think that just solves all the issues essentially. So in a perfect world, if that happens, that'd be great. Because then you still have Ayuk, Marvin Harrison, Puka, Brian Thomas Jr., and then you add another kind of Jordan Love-esque kind of quarterback with him, Fields and May, to kind of be the upside guys. That would just solve every single one of your issues. A better question might be for you is can you go through your league and identify which teams have kind of an excess of quarterbacks or teams that would be open to trading one of them for wide receivers? Because then that would narrow down the number of teams that you can actually trade with, but then B, that would narrow down the actual quarterbacks that would be on the market for you. So maybe all those guys that I just listed aren't available to you, and you're only looking at guys that are in like the Goff or Purdy or Tua range or something like that. Or maybe it's only guys like Lamar and Mahomes and all them too, to where then you're gonna have to pay more or you might have to pay less, so to speak. But like I said, T and Nico Collins for Trevor Lawrence, like money. Add Watson to do that too. Yeah, any way that you can trade a couple of those wide receivers for quarterbacks would be excellent. Love it. Love it. Yeah, Zach, Caleb Williams, follow the gut. Awesome. Well, I've run down to the end of the questions. So unless anybody has a buzzer beater question, this might be where it ends. I'm going to take a drink. I'm out of my water too, so that's another sign that I'm going to be done. What about 110? I'm between Benson or a wide receiver. 110 might honestly get you Brooks. So the way that I have that tier ranked out is Brian Thomas Jr., Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Worthy. At the 110, you are guaranteed one of those three. So I would take one of those three. And I watched that. I have that in my ranking that way. BTJ, then Benson. So you're guaranteed one of those two. Those would be the two that I would take in that order. So if 109 goes Xavier Worthy, I would take Brian Thomas Jr. If 109 goes Brian Thomas Jr., I would take Jonathan Brooks. That's how I would look at it. Is Keon Coleman worth the risk? Not at the 110 to me. He's a second round pick. So that's how I would go about it. I think he's worth the risk at the 201, 202. Just a high upside swing. Hopefully he puts things together with Josh Allen. In the second round, I think he's worth the risk. I don't think he's worth the risk as a first rounder, especially over BTJ or Worthy or Brooks. One guy has Caleb Richardson, Tua, Stafford, Levis, but he wants overpay for quarterbacks. Interesting. Could you throw... can you throw T and Nico for Tua and maybe get like a future second on top? Honestly, T and Nico for Tua isn't like a bad deal just in general. especially if he wants a quote unquote overpay. Maybe toss those two for Tua. It's not as ideal as Trevor Lawrence or Dak, obviously, but Tua was still, I mean, he led the league in passing yards last year. Got Tyreek, got Jalen Waddle. A dump off pass to Achane that goes 70 yards for a touchdown, like that would count for Tua as well, too. I don't hate that. So if he has extra depth at quarterback like you have here, and he needs some wide receivers, maybe toss T and Nico, just see if you get Tua. That's probably worth it. Daniels, Bowers, or Richardson, Benson in a one quarterback league. I will take Daniels and Bowers. And really that just comes down to the difference between Bowers and Benson. Daniels and Richardson, I feel like, are kind of similar in a one quarterback league. They're both just high upside rushing quarterbacks. But the difference between Bowers and Benson is massive. So I'll take Daniels and Bowers. I watch your videos all the time. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Peter. Thanks for the advice. Took a ton of stress off my shoulders. Absolutely, Zach, for sure. So that's where we're going to end it for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out for the past 90 minutes. I will, again, try to do this next week. So I'm trying to get back into like the regularness, a regular scheduled programming. So hopefully that, Aaron, at the buzzer. In the rookie draft, I traded Levis in the 25-second for the 112 and 307, got Ladd in the 112, and Rattler at the 307. I do hope this doesn't screw me. I wanted the Herbert and Ladd stack. I just made a video about trading for Will Levis for the 112, and I don't like Ladd McConkey, but I do hope that this works out for you as well, too. I don't think drafting Ladd at the 112 is a bad move. That's basically around where his value was. And the Herbert Ladd stack could end up working out really, really well for you. But yeah. I don't mind it for sure. I prefer Levis, I think, in this one. But again, I hope it works out for you. And the stack could be nice as well. But yeah, all right. Thank you guys so much again for hanging out. I'll try to do this again next week. And like I said, try to get back into the a regular every single Friday kind of thing for the next month here or so. And we'll just kind of see what goes on. But yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic weekend. And we will catch you guys on Friday. See ya.